It's Monday, and you know what that means. We get the treat of diving into the charts with Mr. Dan Murrell.
Hello, I'm back just in time to go on vacation for 2 weeks after this.
Well, we got a lot of charting to do between now and then, sir.
We do indeed.
Let's talk about the Spider-Verse, one of our favorite, well, I won't speak for you, one of my favorite movies of the year.
One of my favorite movies of the year as well. And it performed at the high end of expectations. $35 million debut. That's actually pretty good considering that as we've talked about on the show before, the Christmas holiday, particularly the Christmas box office season, is backloaded. It is not front-loaded. You just tend to see a drop-off going in a little bit because people are getting ready. They're not going to the movies as much. They're getting ready for the holidays. And then starting on about December 26th is when you see a lot of people flooding into theaters. So for it to start off at $35 million, that's not a bad start. Word of mouth is not going to be a problem. Had an A+ cinema score. That is the highest cinema score of any Spider-Man movie ever.
Well earned.
Well earned.
Well deserved. Right on target.
So it's positioned well going into this week and really next week to be talked about. But this is going to be a brutally competitive holiday season.
There's just so, it saddens me in this respect. Spider-Verse is such a good movie, and it's a movie that we're all talking about, and I worry that it's not going to get the kind of attention that it would have in another release period. But it's also positioned towards the end of the year to get Academy attention, which could give it another boost down the line. And
True.
I think it will have, Dan, what word am I looking for?
You're looking for swinging legs.
It's going to have legs.
Well,
I think it will.
There is a pattern that it would like to play into, which I'll show you right now, but there are some caveats to this. This is a good thing. We talked about how Thanksgiving is generally ruled over by family films because what most studios do is they'll release their big animated feature right around Thanksgiving, and then it'll have a month to play, and it'll play through Christmas. So not a lot of big animated films have opened in December, which means that Spider-Verse gets a record all to its own. Into the Spider-Verse was the best 3-day opening for any animated film in December ever. So that's good. It just like eked out a win over Sing. Princess and the Frog from Disney. Anytime to bring up Beavis and Butthead to America, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And then The Prince of Egypt, which was a disappointment back for DreamWorks way back. But Sing is the movie that Into the Spider-Verse wants to be like, and I'll tell you why. Sing, as you can see, opened financially, not creatively, financially. Sing opened, as you saw, to almost exactly the same number as Into the Spider-Verse, but its final domestic gross was over $270 million, which that's what Into the Spider-Verse wants. However, this is the difference. Sing's 3-day opening was December 23rd through December 25th, which meant that its day 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 were right in line with the huge holiday rush. Spider-Verse has a week between that point, its opening, and that point. Secondly, Sing did not have a lot of strong competition. It was competing with Rogue One, which had opened 2 weeks prior. Assassin's Creed, Passengers, and Why Him were the opening movies that Sing was really competing with. So it was competing with a 2-week-old Star Wars movie and some pretty disappointing entries from the studios, whereas this year
we have Aquaman, Mary Poppins,
Bumblebee,
and then some other movies that don't matter.
Some other movies that are there.
Yeah, they are also there, but they do not matter.
But 3 huge pieces of competition that you could say are going for around the same kind of market.
Yeah.
That's the big difference. So while Sing did set up a precedent for opening around that amount of money in December and making a huge amount of domestic total, there's a lot of ifs, ands, buts, and obstacles. The good news is that the movie itself has done everything that it can possibly do as far as quality and word of mouth.
Yeah.
It has those two things. Now the question is, how will that play through the holiday season?
And how will that play through when, to your point, Dan, none of these pieces are counter, right? They're all aiming at very similar demographic.
They're all aiming at it.
Spider-Verse, yes, is an animated film, but it's not an animated Pixar movie. It's not the film for necessarily little ones. I would recommend you don't take very little ones.
Not very, very little.
Very little. unless you want them to be very interested in acid later in life. That said, I hope it does well. I think it deserves to do well, but it's facing some very stiff competition, particularly in Aquaman. And then on another side, the one that really is aiming at the family demographic fully is Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins, which we don't even know. We have no anecdotal evidence for how that's going to do so far. Reviews came out; they were pretty good, although there were some vocal dissenters. Yeah. So we'll see.
We'll see
how
that
It's a big
one
X factor
does.
how Mary Poppins does. And then Bumblebee, which really has no goodwill, but a lot of very positive reviews and word of mouth.
Yeah.
This next 2 weeks is, as an analyst, it's the kind of things that I'm like, I'm not an actual analyst, but as an at-home analyst, it's the kind of thing that I look at and I just go, I don't know.
I think you're pretty close to...
I feel like I have to be
You're
like
pro
certified
analyst.
to call myself
I think
an
that we
analyst.
should certify you. We certify you right now. You're pro analyst.
Oh, thank you.
This is going to be a fascinating one to watch unfold. Anecdotally, I think Mary Poppins is going to kill it. The Mule.
Actual counter-pro. Now, this is counter-programming that's going for a different audience.
I don't know if you guys tune in for SJU, but if you don't, you're missing out on so many things, including a Dan Murrell, Clint Eastwood impression that happened at the end of the show today that was a beauty to behold. He's not going to do it for you now. No. You have to go watch that episode.
I'm in box office mode now.
That's right.
But yes,
We're
The Mule,
business.
directed by and starring Clint Eastwood, came in second place. It grossed. This is his second movie. The guy is a very distinguished he's an older gentleman. This is his second film directorially to be released this year. 15-17 to Paris early this year. The Mule this year now in December. This was his third best opening weekend as a director. This was his second best opening weekend as a star. And I know. I was surprised too. We can let's see what he's done as a director. Sully, of course, then Space Cowboys, then The Mule, then Unforgiven and Absolute Power.
Oh, that upsets me.
I know, right? Well, if you adjust all that, The Mule's going to be further back. But Sully, obviously, the biggest opening he's ever had as a director.
Unforgiven is so good.
It played long. It had a long tail to it, and I think it ended up going over $100 million in early '90s money, which is great.
Which is great. Okay,
but.
That's my Unforgiven rant.
I know, right? It is a really good movie. But what The Mule's got going for it, like I said, it's got counter-programming. And we've talked about this with Warner Brothers. They've done this already with A Star is Born this year and with Crazy Rich Asians this year. The Mule was made on a production budget of about $50 million, which means that's a really good opening in this window with the kind of audience they're going for, which is not the same as these other big movies that we've been talking about. And on that kind of a budget, Warner Brothers once again stands to make, if this movie holds through the holiday season, a pretty good return off of a modestly budgeted film. That's been a lot of their story this year, and it looks like they've done it again with The Mule.
Well, we will see if The Mule as well has legs. Meanwhile, a movie that is going to do well and continue to do well through next weekend, but then it will stop, is the great... Who's going to see The Grinch after Christmas?
Who knows? I had doubts that The Grinch would still be here. Like, I was curious if it was going to play. We're now like 6 weeks into The Grinch, I think. And look at it. Not only is it still in the top 5, it's outdrawing Ralph Breaks the Internet, which opened after it.
Which just fundamentally bothers me.
Well, you know.
I mean, it is what it is, and I get why people are going to see The Grinch. I think Ralph is a better movie, and I know that Spider-Verse is a better movie.
Yes.
That said, I certainly understand why folks are going to see it, and I applaud everyone's choices.
If the Grinch's goal was to survive until Christmas, congratulations. It has not only survived, it has flourished.
Yeah, and it's a movie that's really interesting when we look at it in total, because that was the goal. The goal was to get it in early, to build, and this is where Universal is winning. We'll talk where it's not. To get it in early, to build over time, to sustain through the holidays, and certainly to have the bulk of the revenue be here in the States domestically, because it's not doing that well, as well overseas, certainly, and understandably so. It's not a character that has as much resonance. So that's where Universal has done very well for itself this year. And in that note, I applaud the studio, because I think studios, each being able to compete is healthy.
Yes.
Disastrous for them was Mortal Engines, and is Mortal Engines. And we begged them to move.
I think everyone saw this coming. Alita moved, but even after Alita Battle Angel moved, I think all of us looked at this schedule. all of us looked at the movies that were coming out, how many of them there were going to be, and said there's going to be one of these that is an absolute disaster. And I think most of us looked at Mortal Engines and said, that looks like the one. And sure enough, $7.5 million, that is the worst live-action wide opening of any Peter Jackson-produced whatever film since The Frighteners in 1996. And if you adjusted the gross, I'm betting The Frighteners would be way ahead of even Mortal Engines. We have a lot more to talk about Mortal Engines, but as badly as I think a lot of people looked at Mortal Engines and said, ooh, this could really be rough, this is sort of like worst case scenario. The bad reviews did not help. We'll talk about international box office, but it doesn't look like that's going to swing in and save it. This could be, and it's the title of this video and what we're going to talk about, the biggest flop of the year, which we'll break down in a few minutes. They have some stiff competition, but this is a horrible situation.
Yeah, it was a tight race for floppery this year, but Mortal Engines is certainly in contention. Not good news for Universal. So in that sense, I'm going to go ahead and retract what I said, and I'm glad that Grinch has been a success for them.
Yes.
Because, and I've said this a lot, I'll say it again, I am of the belief each studio needs to be able to sustain. It needs to be able to compete. Otherwise, we're looking at a Fox 21st century Disney dominating the world, which is going to happen anyway. Well, but they need to have a little fight in them in order for competition to thrive. Mortal Engines, too bad, and we'll talk about why we think that this was such a disaster for them.
Yeah.
Once Upon a Deadpool, how'd that cash grab go?
Couple things outside the top 10. Once Upon a Deadpool,
that with irony,
which was accused of being a cash grab, which I don't think it was. I think it was a charity play. But either way, it opened outside the top 10 at number 11. If you're looking purely by per screen average, it was number 22 for the weekend. So it proved that the audience interest in a recut version of a 7-month-old film is not very high. I don't think that's very shocking.
Particularly when there's so many great films in theaters.
Yeah, exactly. If it was a cash grab, it didn't grab a lot of cash, but hopefully it made a little bit of money for charity. It will be playing. It has a very limited engagement. It only opened on 1,500 screens, which is about half what a normal huge wide release would open on. And it's only in theaters till the 24th. So not a huge splash for Once Upon a Deadpool. I'm sure that they will put that out in some way, shape, or form on demand or home video. I liked the Fred Savage parts, even if it maybe wasn't worth the money. I thought they were funny enough to warrant a watch.
I think this is what I would ask of people. Go see Into the Spider-Verse. Donate $2 to F Cancer. Yeah. They are donating $1 out of every ticket. That way everyone wins, and then watch Once Upon a Deadpool at home, which probably best enjoyed. Let's talk about Creed 2.
Creed 2, a couple of landmarks around Creed 2. It passed $100 million at the box office. It is now just a few million away from outgrossing the first film. But Creed 2 also kind of caps off the year, a little box office history, at least domestically. This is the first time in domestic box office history that 4 films from black directors have grossed over $100 million in 1 year. Stephen Caple Jr. with Creed 2, Ava DuVernay with A Wrinkle in Time, Antoine Fuqua with Equalizer 2, and of course Ryan Coogler with Black Panther.
With all the money in the world.
All of the money. But that is, I think, that's a great way to story to sort of cap off this year. That is a milestone that has never been reached domestically before, and hopefully the first of many.
I presume and I believe the first of very many. Yeah. If Beale Street Could Talk from Moonlight director Barry Jenkins, another big Oscar contender this year.
It is, yeah. It's one of the ones that's sort of gaining some momentum late, particularly in the performance category. Best Supporting Actress is the category that keeps coming up a lot with this film. It was open on 4 screens, about $50K per screen. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good per screen start. And it is about half of what Moonlight drew back in October 2016, as Barry Jenkins' last film obviously went on to win Best Picture. That's about half of what that drew. However, the difference being Moonlight opened in 4 theaters in October of 2016. Obviously now this is a much more competitive season, not just at the blockbuster market, but all of the limited release films are starting to hit now. There are a lot of films that were expanding, a lot more that were in limited release openings. So I wouldn't necessarily peg this as a huge barricade for If Beale Street Could Talk. I would probably just say this is a pretty solid start given the fact that it is a very crowded marketplace right now. Yeah,
we're heading into a heavy award season race, as well as the box office race for the winter films. Aquaman, meanwhile, is swimming his way into world domination already before it's even been released here in the States.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to talk about it on Charting. We talked about it on SJU last Monday. I had to go see Aquaman last Monday, which is why there was no show last week. Aquaman, the #1 movie in the world for a second week, ahead of its domestic debut this weekend. $126 million this weekend. A lot of that coming from China. It has already grossed over $250 million worldwide. Again, a massive chunk of that is from the Chinese box office, where it is performing very well.
We're seeing a pattern here, Dan.
We're seeing a big pattern here. It's performing incredibly well in China, and if you just look at the other market, it's actually open in a lot of international markets. Looking at the box office, it's performing very favorably compared to other films in the DCEU, outpacing almost all of them. For some of them, it's just behind Batman v Superman, but still right up there. This is looking like it's going to be, it already is developing into one, but it will continue to be a massive international hit. Domestically, we'll see how it does. Certainly, from the reactions that we've gotten from a lot of people,
are going to like it.
It seems to be a crowd pleaser.
It's a crowd pleaser.
It's definitely a crowd pleaser. So that means it could suck up a lot of money over the Hollywood season if the competition doesn't get to it. But if you're looking at the international numbers, and if it does incredibly well here in the U.S., the number to look at if you're Warner Brothers or if you're a DCEU fan and you want to kind of track its progress is $873 million. Yeah. That is the gross of Batman v Superman. That is the highest global grosser in the DCEU. That would be the number for Aquaman to reach if it wants to become the highest grossing. Not that there's no pressure on it to become that, but if it would like to set that mark, $873 million is how much is the number that it wants. And if you're looking at $250 million in 2 weeks, that's not a bad start.
Aquaman's doing very, very well for itself internationally. Yes. And then this is one of the two movies that I predict is going to clean up over the holidays, which is Aquaman on one end and Mary Poppins, maybe. Still a big question mark there, but I think it has the potential.
Yeah.
If reviews were better, I'd feel more solid about it. But Aquaman, I think the reviews are irrelevant.
Probably.
I just
they
think
seem very relevant to some people, but I think ultimately the reviews will be irrelevant
in terms
to
of the box
average
office.
Moviegoer. Yes.
In terms of the box office and what that yields, I think this is going to be a big crowd pleaser that people will see multiple times.
I think that's very possible. And what Aquaman has going in its favor, and having seen all of the DCEU films in the theaters, this one for me is the one that I would say, even my mixed feelings that I had about it aside, it is the most cinematic. And it is the one that I would say go see it in IMAX.
Oh, yeah.
Go see it in 3D. Go see it on the big screen.
You got to see it on the big screen.
Or people will go see it again just for the experience.
Yeah.
Out of all of them, this is the one that I think people are going to go back and say, like, I want to go see it again just to watch the effects, just to do the action scenes
and to live in that world. And I think that was, I recognize today, one of the things that I wished I would have had a little more of, because I love fantasy so much and I love visiting other worlds and sci-fi. This is underwater, obviously fantasy. I wish it would slow down enough for me to really get to know Atlantis. But if you're going to do it, go see it on the big screen for sure. This is a movie you need to see in theaters. Yeah. A movie, I know we're not there yet, but Bohemian Rhapsody blows my mind. Speaking of crowd pleaser and going to see it over and over and over, this is killing me. It's amazing.
Another $24 million in the coffers for Bohemian Rhapsody. It is now we'll see on the chart in a little bit, one of the top 10 highest grossing films in the world this year. Over $600 million globally, a global gross for that, off of a budget of, again, about $50 million.
And I don't mean killing me in a bad way. I actually really like the movie. I think it's a very fun film.
It is. It really, really is. And, maybe one that we should have seen coming, but I think one that not a lot of people were like, oh, this is going to outgross Solo.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a lot of people that were saying that at the beginning of the year.
Those weren't bets I was making anyway. No. I would be impressed with the person who was. That said, we still have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is making his presence known in the world as well.
Yeah, mainly driven by its domestic release. They're obviously wanting to do a lot more business internationally. The Grinch is one that's very much driven domestically.
Yeah.
It's not a huge. It came out in China. It didn't do very well because the Grinch is not a character that really has a lot of global resonance. It is
Yeah.
very much a U.S. North America character as far as growing up with Dr. Seuss. Not that there aren't people abroad that are fans of the Grinch, but it is much more rooted in domestic, which is why you see so much of the gross. I think the split right now is like 70% domestic, 30% international, because the Grinch sort of lists a little bit more to the mythology of the U.S. That being said, it's doing so well here that it doesn't really matter what the split is because it's making all the money it needs to right here in the U.S. But the Mortal Engines is not.
No. Mortal Engines is not. Shall we use that as our jumping off point to talk about the biggest disasters this year? First of all, Mortal Engines for me is a curiosity. Tell me what you think. When they sat down to do this film and budget it, it's a YA property that is being developed, and this was developed years ago. Peter Jackson
snatched up the rights about a decade ago.
He did, and he was developing it for many, many years. For a number of different reasons, he wasn't able to do it. He went off and he did The Hobbit. He hired his protege to direct the movie. That said, this is well past the expiration date on YA kind of phenomenon. It's well past the expiration date on the charm of a dystopian centered movie, and it's a property that not a ton of people are familiar with. It's got no named stars other than the biggest one, I think, is Hugo Weaving. And
I mean, Peter Jackson is the name they put on this.
Peter Jackson is the name they put on this thing, and he's producing it. Yeah, I think he was pretty involved, but he was producing it, you know. So why then does it get the kind of budget that it got in order to allow for this kind of disaster?
Well, you know, honestly, I could see the presentation of this project, the visuals and the effects work in this movie are very impressive.
Yeah.
And I could see somebody looking at the designs and looking at this epic scope and being like, we're on board. Oh my God, this is going to be huge. It was the script. It was the screenplay. I would say that was really this movie's. I don't really know if this movie had much of a chance, but it was certainly, I don't think, helped by the fact that there was really nothing inventive or original or great about the script or the story. And I think that's what sunk it in the end. It really needed a lot of help, and it didn't get any of that help. And I think part of it is, you know, like Peter Jackson's been developing it for so many years. At some point, I think it's just like a fait accompli. It's just like, you know, we said he could do it, and I guess he just have to keep going.
You know, Hollywood universe, what you could have taken that money and put it towards. You know what else a filmmaker's been developing for years? Guillermo del Toro, and about 20 scripts that he just recently released, all of which look fascinating.
But all of which would have made about $5.
Well,
probably.
Very well.
Much like this movie.
Much like this movie, at least that would have been cool.
So there's an article that came out this weekend.
I don't want to be mean to Mortal Engines.
Well, yeah, but it's not doing well. And I think that even the people that went and enjoyed the visuals of it would probably say there was not much groundbreaking. It wasn't great storytelling. It was mainly just world building. But the articles have already come out saying, well, Mortal Engines is going to lose at least $100 million for the studio this year. We're getting toward the end of the year. Right now, we'll see. It doesn't look like we have any full-blown disasters on the horizon, even if Mary Poppins or Bumblebee or Aquaman or even Spider-Verse ultimately underperform. I don't think any of them will be painted as this sort of disastrous failure. So reading the stories about Mortal Engines and looking at some of the other films that came out this year, I kind of wanted to do some rough calculations and figure out, like, what is the biggest flop of 2018? Is it Mortal Engines? Is it another movie? So these are not official numbers. These are just my rough estimations based on basically taking the reported budget for a movie. This we'll talk about as each one comes through. This does not include, you know, promotion and advertising. That's a whole extra amount of money that gets tacked on at the end. But the reported budget of a movie, then looking at the gross, the breakdown, how much it made domestically versus how much it made internationally, and sort of applying the conventional wisdom, which is that most films take home 50% of what they make domestically, and about a third of what they take in internationally. So it's looking at their gross, looking at the breakdown, and how does that break down to what they cost, and then it's the intangibles too. So these were, I thought that there were 5 movies that I think would qualify for the title of the biggest flop of the year.
And only one of them is 1 to 1.5 is a huge surprise.
Yeah, exactly. I think
work.
a lot of these you'll look at and be like, yeah. Okay. The first one we'll look at is Mortal Engines. Like I said, it's been reported that it's going to lose $100 million plus. Estimated budget of $100 million right now, today, as it stands, based on what it's made both domestically and worldwide, where it's opened in a lot of places. Its last hope is that it has a miracle run in China. Mm-hmm. It still has release date TBD. So we don't know when that question is going to be answered. But it's not in the near future, which could hurt it going forward as far as buzz and everything. Right now, its estimated net gross is about $15 million. So if you're looking at that, right now, today, if you're looking at estimated numbers, they're about $85 million in the hole. That's before you get to advertising and promotion costs. So yeah, they're looking probably at a hole around $120, $150 million as we sit here today for Mortal Engines, with the X factor being, what is it going to do going forward? Again, results have not been encouraging. And a huge market left still to open in. Can they pull off some kind of a miracle and make up some of that ground? But Mortal Engines definitely in contention for being a huge money loser. But let's look at some others, Ron.
Well, there's one that we talked about the weekend that it opened.
Yeah.
And that is another befuddling bit of madness, which was Robin Hood.
Robin Hood, another movie with an estimated reported budget of $100 million. Mainly it's in a race right now with Mortal Engines to see who can gross
less.
The least, the most. I guess the most. Its estimated net gross currently, based on what it's made domestically and what it's made internationally, is at about $28.7 million. So looking at about a $70 million hole. I think the difference between Mortal Engines and Robin Hood, however, is Mortal Engines is a simultaneous release across a lot of international markets. It's from a much bigger studio. Lionsgate is a much smaller studio. I think that Mortal Engines probably had a much larger rollout for promotion and advertising.
Well, the other difference is Universal can, because it is a larger studio, because it has a hit in the Grinch and things like that, can sustain a hit. Not as well as Disney can sustain a hit, and we will talk about that.
Yes.
The supposedly bulletproof Disney was not so bulletproof this year.
Yeah.
A few times over. But Lionsgate is going to feel that loss more.
They are, yeah. And I think if you're looking at dollars and cents, Lionsgate is going to feel it a lot more. But at the end, when you're writing your spreadsheets, I think that Mortal Engines is probably going to lose a little bit more than Robin Hood, just because it is on a much bigger scale and it had a much bigger promotional ask than that film. So I think Mortal Engines still has the edge. But we go into what I call the Disney 3.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For all the successes that Disney had this year, they had 3 of the, not just disappointments, 3 of the biggest box office flops of the year. The first one being The Nutcracker and the Four Realms. Remember that one? I don't.
Nope.
Estimated budget around $120 million.
This is another one that I
don't get it either.
Yeah.
Looking at the net gross, again, these are rough numbers that I just calculated based on what it's made. I'm estimating it's brought home about half of that. So you're looking at about a $60 million deficit there. Now, I think its only salvation is, compared to the next 2 that we're going to talk about, it had a much, much, much less aggressive marketing campaign.
Yeah.
It was not
as
they knew. I think they knew. And so I think the only thing that kind of brings that one back from the brink of utter disaster, I wouldn't be shocked if they still lost about $100 million on this, is that it was not marketed as heavily as these next 2 films. And that may have ended up saving them some money or costing them some money, depending on how many butts they did not get in seats.
The next one that we're going to talk about, I think, was a huge disappointment and a little bit of surprise. And then we're going to talk about the last one is philosophically their biggest hit. Spiritually, to the brand, I think the last one is the biggest hit. Well,
the biggest hit is in a bad thing, not a sensation.
Oh, thank you.
The biggest blow.
Biggest blow. Thank you very much for clarifying. A Wrinkle in Time.
A Wrinkle in Time.
This isn't the one that's the biggest blow.
Huge letdown for Disney. Yeah. Estimated budget around 100. I've seen it between 100 and 130 million dollars as far as the budget goes. I put it at 115 to sort of split the difference. Net gross around $60.5 million. However, the marketing for this film was everywhere.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they put another $80 to $100 million into the marketing of the film. So this, I think, could be competing with Mortal Engines as far as which one ultimately lost more money. Now, I think that when you look at the intangibles, Wrinkle in Time probably going to do a little better on home releases. They can probably sell it to, I think it's already on Netflix, streaming services, and I think that's going to be a bigger draw. So The ancillaries, I think, are going to make up a little bit more of that money. But for me, when I'm thinking what is the biggest flop of the year, what is the potential to lose the most money, I think it could be either one of those. I think it could be Wrinkle in Time, and I think it could be Mortal Engines, and it just depends on where was Disney able to make up that ground elsewhere in the release cycle of Wrinkle in Time
versus
Mortal Engines, which I don't think is going to have a huge draw as far as selling a lot of Blu-rays and DVDs.
No.
I don't think you're going to be able to sell it to cable for nearly as much money. Even though it was a letdown, it still has the Disney prestige of Wrinkle in Time. It has Oprah Winfrey. I think that you can still sell that. Yeah.
It has so many more selling points than Mortal Engines does, who only has Peter Jackson as a movie. And then there's also, frankly, just a curiosity factor that I think a lot of people were going, well, because everyone talked about how sort of crazy it was. Well, how crazy was it becomes a question now. This one, to me, is the one that probably caused the most emergency meetings to happen within the halls of Disney and Lucasfilm, and that is Solo.
Yes.
Because they do not want a single Star Wars flop. Not one.
But paradoxically, I think I will say I think this movie is a bit of a paradox, and we'll talk about why. Money-wise, if you look at it, estimated budget around $300 million or more. They basically shot the movie 1.75 times. And then the net gross that I'm estimating, again, based on the splits, domestic and international, just a little over half that. So if you're looking at dollars and cents as far as what movie lost the most money at the box office this year, I don't think there's any question that it's Solo based on what Disney invested. And keep in mind,
that's production.
The promotion and advertising budget was definitely over $100 million for this one.
It was probably $150 to $200 million.
Yeah. So Disney could have lost $300 million just on box office receipts on Solo. But in a weird way, I think this one might be might lose the least money in the long run of any of them, because it has a Star Wars brand attached to it. It has way more marketing and merchandising opportunities than any of these other movies. It's got the theme park. You can sell the Solo
toys.
You can sell the toys. You can sell the Solo merchandise elsewhere. So in a weird way, even though Solo was by the box office numbers, I think the biggest flop of the year, I think it might lose the least money for the studio when you get down to how much money did it generate at the end of the day, when all of its spending capital and potential has been earned. I think Solo might, in a weird way, have cost them the least amount of money.
Yeah, when you sort of add in the merchandising piece of it and all of those ancillary benefits, sure. But I think it's probably also the one, like I was saying, where because they do not want any room for failure around, it's like the Empire, around Star Wars, because that property is so crucial to their success on every level. Now with the streaming service, we have to stay interested in Star Wars. Any dip in that, I think, is considered disastrous.
Well, that's the ticking time bomb with Solo is, yes, they can push some money around and just say like, well, yeah, we lost $300 million at the box office, but we got $100 million in selling the ancillary rights to this, and we did another $70 million of that. But if we find out a year from now that Solo, in conjunction with the other films that have come out, have done some long-term damage to the brand, then the losses could intensify at a much greater degree. So I guess I should put an asterisk to this, is that I think right now Solo might be the least consequential financially.
But in the long
term, if it has done long-term damage to the Star Wars brand, then maybe it's the most consequential. It could be a year from now, everybody's forgotten it, and
It's okay.
Episode 9.
We'll move past
I almost said it. It's like Beetlejuice or Voldemort.
It'll appear, you know that, Dan.
I know, it'll just pop up.
Yeah.
Episode 9 does amazing, and The Mandalorian's great, and they sell a lot of Disney Plus subscriptions, and Solo was a blip on the radar.
Then it's in the rearview mirror.
But we don't know.
It really depends. We were talking about this the other day with brands. It's like, unfortunately or not, you get 3 to 4 movies in, and a certain expectation is set. And then that expectation, you either have to meet it or overcome it. Meaning, it's true that you'll probably give more of a pass for the first miss on a very consistent franchise. The second and the third, though, now you come in with a real win and you're harsher on it.
Yeah.
That's just the truth. So that's why they don't want any mix-ups. The Grinch, meanwhile, is chasing Venom on the domestic chart.
Yeah. So, wrapping that up, what's the biggest flop of 2018? I think box office-wise, it's Solo. followed by, I think it's a toss-up between A Wrinkle in Time and Mortal Engines. Robin Hood is certainly in there, Nutcracker, but it's always about the long game. So I think Mortal Engines could be the one maybe that is ultimately the least productive because there's no tail to it.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says we're going to keep generating money off of this. This is it. And what it is ain't much. So
not much at all. And I'm not going to go buy that scarf toy or I don't know even what you would. This look.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to be a big seller at Universal Studios. I don't think you can even do this at Universal Studios, right? You can't. You can't cover your face. So, no.
No. Not going to be a big hit for them.
No.
However, The Grinch
is a big hit for them.
Continues to be a big hit for them.
That's right. Looking at the 2018 domestic chart, this is from a couple weeks ago because I wasn't here last week. So since we last spoke, The Grinch jumped up 4 spots to number 6. Venom is now on the bottom, although it's kind of scraping and clawing to catch up to Star Wars. Ant-Man and the Wasp there, Mission Impossible, and then the top 5 unchanged. Now, I was reading that, because a lot of people asked about this, that Fox was technically counting the grosses of Once Upon a Deadpool into Deadpool 2, but it's not going to be that consequential. Yeah. It appears. That might add $5-10 million to the final, but it's not going to be a game changer. I don't think it's worth an asterisk at this point. Yeah. But some people did ask that question. From what I've read, Fox is saying, even though some people are saying like, you can't do that, they are saying like, no, that counts toward Deadpool 2. So we'll see.
I wonder what. Anyway, that's a whole other question that I'll explore later about their books.
Exactly.
Bohemian Rhapsody and Fantastic Beasts 2.
That's right. Again, since we spoke, Bohemian Rhapsody, Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, both have jumped onto the 2018 worldwide charts, knocking out Operation Red Sea and Ready Player One. Wow, they've been with us for a while, Roth.
Yeah,
they didn't
really
quite
have.
make it to the end of 2018. Ant-Man and the Wasp got bumped down too. Fantastic Beasts is about $200 million away from the gross of the first film. But it's sort of ending its run in a lot of markets. It's about $66 million, tracking at this point in its run less than the first one here in North America. So it's going to have a little bit of trouble, I think, approaching the gross of the first movie. And, maybe Warner Brothers is okay with that. Maybe they're not. We've talked about it on the show before. But, the concept of how well is it going to do, it's not going to significantly outperform the first film if it passes it at all.
Yeah. We'll see where we land with that. But, Dan,
yes,
we are going to be on break next week, and it's the week that we will have Mary Poppins Returns, Aquaman, Bumblebee, and then some other movies, but we'll name them.
Right.
Second act, Welcome to Marwen, Holmes and Watson, Interesting to Meet Vice.
Yeah.
All flooding the theaters.
Mary Poppins Returns opens 2 days from today on Wednesday. Aquaman, Bumblebee, second act, Welcome to Marwen this Friday. And then next Wednesday, the day after Christmas, Vice and Holmes and Watson.
There'll be a lot to talk about when we get back from break.
So much.
There's going to be so much charts.
I don't even know where I'm going to start next time. Like, what are the hits? What are the misses? What are the ones that are going to be flowing
Biggest
through?
Holiday hits or misses?
Remember last year, Greatest Showman? It was like a miss, and then it was a hit, and then it was a massive hit. And
then we heard about it for 2 years straight.
Yeah.
Even though it's only been 1 year.
Seems like 2, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem like 2? It does in my heart. So this is I'm gonna have so much fun. I know last year I think one week I broke down and just sent out some charts anyway. So I might do it again, particularly if one of these films, I can't really begrudge any of the ones I've seen so far their success. Even though, like I said, I had very mixed feelings on Aquaman. All the people that have tweeted me and sent me comments that were not wishing ill on my loved ones, saying that they saw it and they liked it, I get it. I don't.
Yeah.
My thoughts are not an attack on your thoughts, certainly. And if you're, a lot of people say you're wrong. I'm like, well, it's my opinion, so it can't really be right or wrong, just as yours isn't right or wrong. It's just my thought. That's what I get paid to do here. So I could see Aquaman absolutely exploding over the holidays. I wouldn't be shocked if it did. And I think a lot of people think that just because maybe we don't give a movie a great review, that we sit here like stewing over a movie. It's just like, I can't believe they went to see that piece. It's like, no, I don't care.
The only movies that I lament failing at the box office are ones that I would like to see rewarded with money, because that means we'll get more of that good quality. And the only ones that I truly lament exploding at the box office are movies that I think are bad for the industry.
Just awful, yeah.
Because they are so the worst of the Transformers movie, because what you're guaranteeing is 5 more of those, and all of that financial investment and all of that marketing investment is going to go towards this thing that we know is objectively, and there's some people who love it. I get that too. Not good, but Aquaman is not that.
No.
It's a spectacle film. It's a ton of fun. I expect people to enjoy it. I think we said that in our review.
We did.
No part of me is surprised that people are enjoying it. Great. Awesome. I love Jason Momoa too.
I say this with all due respect, and I love all of you who watch the show and who engage with us, and I love talking about movies. But if you think that tweeting me over the holiday break about Aquaman and your disagreement about Aquaman is going to get me riled up, I honestly couldn't care less. The last thing I will be thinking about is Aquaman, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to, if you think that we're going to start a debate, that's not going to happen. I'm going to be at home. I'm going to be home with my family. We're going to be doing the holiday stuff and getting ready for New Year's. And if you went and saw Aquaman and you liked it and you want to, say in your face, you feel free to do that. But I'm not going to be arguing with you because I'm going to be off doing other stuff.
I'm going to be eating cookies.
Yeah.
Lots.
I hope you like it. I don't wish an ill time on anybody at the movie theater.
If you take your hard-earned dollars and cents to go to a movie, all I want is for that to pay dividends for you.
If Aquaman is worth your money, that's great.
Yeah.
Like, we don't sit here going like, I hope you waste your money. Like, no, all we do is tell you what we think. And sometimes if there's a movie like Spider-Verse that we really want to encourage you to throw your money at and go see.
So we can get more nice things.
Yes. By the way, Bumblebee is a movie that we would both encourage you to throw your money to, so we could get more of those Transformers movies and not
the
more
bad ones.
of the other kinds. But we have one more movie, Roth, Welcome to Marwen, that
we sure do.
There's going to be a review for, I believe, on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So that'll be the last review of 2018, I think, for us.
And then to go out, Dan.
We'll be doing the best. We do our best of right after the new year because we have to see everything first.
You have to see everything. I'm playing catch up right now with some of these movies. I'm trying to see as many as I can in a short period of time.
I don't have those sweet screeners. Like, I got to go hunt these things down one by one in a movie theater.
I got to go on some hidden markets.
Oh, well, I don't know.
Get VHS copies.
They still make those? No. Well, that is not the preferred.
I have to beg people.
We're watching Roma on a pan and scan 4x3 VHS.
To help me find the hard to find. And that's the bummer, because some of these hard to find films are the ones that are the best of the year.
That's true.
So frequently, and you can't find them.
Can't find them.
And it just stinks.
It does.
But anyway.
We'll be back. One or both of us will be back to review Welcome to Marwen. And then Charting will be back 2 weeks from today. Let me think. No, wait.
2 weeks.
No, 2 weeks from today will be New Year's Eve. We won't be back 3 weeks from today.
Yeah.
Charting will be back. It's the end of the long holiday season. It's time for us to take a long winter's nap. We'll be back 3 weeks from today with the latest in the Hollywood box office. What swam? Aquaman, I'm guessing. What sank? Hopefully nothing, but we'll see. And all of the Christmas wrap-ups.
What did Mary Poppins' umbrella rise? We'll find out.
Did it rise or fall? We'll find out. We're all punchy. Thanks for watching. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
And a happy new chart for 2019.
And a beautiful new charting year.
See you next year.